Welcome to STLCAST. This is a podcast initiative from STLFlix. We're here at the Rocky Mountain Rap Festival, and we get to talk with a lot of really cool people from the 3D printing community. And today we have a very special guest, which is Steve from Hueforge. Steve is the creative genius that was able to bring to the printing community this incredible product, which is Hueforge, and we're very happy to have him with us today. I also have my two co-hosts in here, Ben Pendergast, aka It's Boy in Space, and Lincoln, my partner at STLFlix, the CEO of STLFlix, actually. And we're going to be talking with Steve about Hueforge and how it all started.
Oh, I'm excited to have this conversation. Thank you for inviting me.
Nice. So who is Steve besides 3D printing?
Hueforge.
And Hueforge.
Right, yeah, I am a software developer. I was a software developer right out of college, working mostly government jobs. I'm in the DC area, and like all the work there is government jobs. So mostly government jobs in the DC area, and a father, family, 3 kids. I just I got into woodworking for a while, and I got into 3D printing, and it's kind of back and forth. And I've always liked making things. I've always liked creating things, either writing them. My software is very creative, or physically creating them. I kind of like when you physically create something and you have something you're holding when you're done.
Yeah.
That's really satisfying.
So make a juice dough or
I have to say, it wasn't really like, I like to make things that I knew how to make, and I didn't know how to make a lot of stuff. So then I had to learn how to make stuff, and it would be, I'd go, get YouTube would feed me woodworking videos, and I watch a bunch of woodworking videos and say, I could do that. Okay. And then it started sending me 3D printing videos, but
there's like that drive to do the next thing once you physically have something you've worked so hard on.
Yeah.
That's like the key to 3D printing. Like that first initial feeling that you're like, whoa, I made this.
Yeah.
I can touch this, right?
Okay, yeah. It was in my computer, now it's in my head.
Yeah, there's something that you said to me a long time ago, and it's like I clicked for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's something really satisfying about having something to hold, whatever the medium is. Writing a book or paper, or make something out of wood, or making something out of clay, or making 3D printing something that you thought up and created, and it's just like you hold it in your hand afterwards. You're like, I had this thing that I made.
A wild moment.
How did you learn to code, Steve?
I mean, I went to college for high school. I started programming, and just took to it, and found that in my programming class in high school, it was, you either got it or you didn't. There was no people, you couldn't drag someone into it if they didn't get it right away. Like, you had 104%, which is like the maximum you could have, or you had like a 70 and you were struggling to get by. And I took to it right away. And then I went to college and did 4 years of computer science, and came out and, went to work. And I always tried to I did some graphic specialization in college. And I always wanted to bring it into my job, and my job was never there. And I would bring it in a little bit, and I'd be able to, hey, what if we did this? And they'd, okay, try that, show me. And I'd do it. And that's kind of cool. And it would never go anywhere. They never felt like they wasted their time, but they were never excited about what, they were like, let's push this forward and work on it forever. And so over a series of different jobs, I just, said, okay, if I'm going to do that, it's going to be on my own time at some point. But, with kids and a family and everything and work, it was just hard to ever find time.
It is.
So.
But someone found time to create Hueforge. How did you start with 3D printing? How long ago was it?
I got my first printer in 2019. It was
pretty recent.
Yeah, it was the Ender 3 Pro. I had seen printers, and I thought they were really neat. Like, they were that merging of technology, software, and physical world. And I had done that in a couple of jobs. Not all my jobs were like that, but a few of my jobs, I touched hardware and made things move with software. I was like, this is what I love. And so 3D printing was right in there. But I looked at it and I said, early on, the machines are too expensive for how well they work. And so I'm not going to get into it until a machine is under $250 and can print pretty well.
And actually print something.
Right. Pretty reliably. I'm like, I'm okay if it's not perfect. It doesn't have to be a perfect machine. I like tinkering with things. So that's fine. But it needs to mostly work. And so I started getting fed all the videos on Ender 3 Pros. I watched one of them, and then of course there's 6,000 of them. I watched a lot of teaching tech. I watched some videos that I've never seen as creators again. But I watched, here's the upgrades, here's the problems, here's the fixes. So I think it was either my birthday or Father's Day. They're close together. I said to my wife, because it's always hard to shop for dad, right? I'm like, I want a 3D printer. This is the one I want. And so it showed up, and I immediately ordered a aluminum extruder because they had the plastic ones that break, and we had to set it up on the kitchen counter, the island in the kitchen to print on because I didn't have anywhere to put it. And so I'd print something, and it would sit there for a couple hours and print something. I think the first thing I printed was an extruder knob, and looking back, I'm just shocked it printed because it was super under extruded, like really like paper thin. And I'm like, how did that stick to the bed?
Foamy.
Yeah. How did that adhere to the bed and then actually print the whole thing and not fail? And
I'm sure like in those moments, it was very difficult to figure out exactly like what was really going wrong, right?
As I said, I'd watched a lot of videos ahead of time. So I went and I said, why is this real thin? Oh, I wonder if it's the extruder issue that people talk about. And I have one's coming in a couple of days. So when it came and I installed it, and then I learned about E-steps and I did the E-step tuning.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you don't know, it's a trial by fire and it's a baptism and you earn it, at 12 o'clock when you're trying to get that print to just finish or just start and it won't do, you can't get things to stick it all to bed. You're like, it just stuck and I just washed it. What's going on? Then you start, learning and you get your...
And it's crazy, right? Because it's crazy that you only got it to work because you bought an extra part that came 2 days after. And then eventually you worked it. It's so recent in the 3D printing history, but still, like it's a story that would frustrate a lot of people right at the start.
Yeah. But I think I did come in there knowing because I'd seen the videos. I'd seen here's the things to fix on the Ender 3 when you get it.
What the challenge?
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, and for me for a long time, modding my printer was, people say it's 50%. It was probably 70% of what I did. With my printer is print new parts for my printer, get upgrades for my printer, see if I could make it better, faster. I clipperized my printer very fast, very early. I was a programmer. That was obvious for me to do.
It was easy for you.
And I was a Linux programmer for many years before, at that time I was not, but I had been a Linux printer for a long time. And so it was a programmer for a long time. And so I was like, oh, Raspberry Pi, Linux, Python, no problem. Let's go do this.
I'm wondering what kind of stuff were you printing? Because came up with HueForge.
Yeah. So pretty early, I started with the Flexies, but they weren't as cool back then. They were like the flat Flexies, I linked to get the Flexi Dragon and the fish and stuff because my kids wanted those. I think I did find the MacGyver, or MacGyver, I don't know how to say it, MacGyver lizards, geckos early because they were out there for a long time before Flexies became really popular. Yeah. And, I think I found those. Those are pretty cool. And all the print in place stuff that proves, that you can do it. The iris, the iris
ball,
the iris ball, like twist. So I printed those for a while, and then I actually was like, how do I make some money with this? Because it's a hobby that's going to cost, and so I need a way to pay back a little bit, like at least buy my filament and stuff like that.
So the whole idea was to somehow sponsor the hobby itself.
Yeah, I wanted to sponsor the hobby itself, and I wanted to also justify the time I wanted to sink into it. It makes sense if I'm paying for...
To justify to your wife.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, at the end of room it takes up and things. So I actually designed just a standard tag, like a multicolor standard swap by layer. It was my kids' swim team. Their logo was an O, like a slanted O, and I turned it into a pumpkin. And printed it in orange and they had this Halloween thing. So it was black on the back, then orange, and then it had like the name of Don's Boo Bash on it in silk white. Because I found silk printed great. And I made a few plates of those and took them to the swim team. And I had to learn how do you swap, how do you set the layer swaps, all that stuff. I think I was already out of Cura by then, but if it wasn't, I was out of Cura by the time I saw that Bruce's Slicer could do it by just clicking on the slider. Yeah. And the team... They didn't buy those, but they thought these are kind of cool, and they ordered like 100 of them or 150 of them for this trip. Snowflakes with their logo on it and stuff. And I said, I can print 9 at a time. It's going to take me forever. So first, I need to speed up my printer, and second, I need another printer. So now I got my printer duplicated at that point. So
before receiving any money,
but I had an order.
Oh, yeah.
So and the order was
There was hope.
the order was the order basically paid for the second printer.
Yeah.
It didn't pay for anything I'd spent up until then, but it paid for the second printer, and so that was justification.
It was the beginning.
And the mods, you modded a second printer, just like the first one.
So the second printer, I bought it knowing I need to modify it. So it was a 300 by 300 by 350 Core XY, and a no name brand from China, and I like immediately new bed. I needed the PEI spring steel bed. Was going to put clipper on it, and I needed to replace the MCU with an SGR 1.3. That was the board at the time. So I bought all that stuff ahead of time. Like right as I bought the printer, I bought it. But I got the printer for like $400. So it was a crazy good deal for the printer. And I pretty much never looked back.
So you had to mod your second printer to the first, just like the first one, right?
Yeah, it had to be clipper, had to be fast, had to be able to print real well. And I upgraded it right away. I got the tags all done, got them shipped off to the team.
How long did it take?
I think it took a week because and I was not working from home, so it was I could print one at night, and I had to it was about 4 hours to do a bed full of prints, and it was about the same on both. I could do 12 on the big printer, and I could do 9 on the small printer. They both took basically the same amount of time to do those numbers because the Core XY was obviously faster.
Uh-huh.
And so I would start them right as I got home from work. And then after like 3 hours, I'd do the first swap, and then the other swap were much faster because they're much smaller. So I'd do the first swap, and then the second swap, and the third. So I think they were 3 color. Yeah, they were 3 color tags. I kind of standardized on 3 colors. But I was doing layer swaps like for a long time, like really far into my 3D printing. And I got really into functional printing when I wasn't printing tags. Parts around the house, things that broke, or just printer parts. Like I experimented quite a bit with the remote direct drive extruders. I can't remember what they were called, but they used the flex shaft. There was one that came out of Australia, I want to say, that was one of the first ones. But the guy who created the orbiter extruder had one on Thingiverse, and I built it and tried it, and I couldn't ever get it quite right, which is why he bailed and went on the orbiter path. But
is that definitely the functional prints? Like early on for me, my wife actually bought me my first 3D printer, and then it was the whole process of trying to justify the purchase in her mind. So it was always that, see, look, I printed this little like fix the coffee maker.
Yeah.
And that's after this first order you had. Did you keep pursuing new orders? What was the plan?
I mostly pursued it just with that team because there were 500 people on that team. So, there was always possibility of orders. I think I would get a couple a year from them, and that kind of just became like I would just do that for a couple of years. And they came after me at one year, like I must have been 2 weeks before the season started. They're like, we need 450 tags. Like, okay. So, I rushed it up. And then I think at that point, the fortunate thing about that, I think, was right after COVID. And so it was like 2021, fall of 2021. So we were all working from home. So I could run a lot more tags per day. I think I could get 36 from the one printer, and I could get 27 from the other. So I could get 50 tags a day. So it was much more reasonable that in 2 weeks I could turn out. But, like a failed print was a problem. But I learned, and this was all no bed leveling. I had no auto bed leveling.
Oh my God.
I did print I created and printed a 9-point leveling bracket for my big Core XY, the 300 by 300 bed, because it dished a lot.
Uh-huh.
I was printing 100 millimeter second first layers on that printer because the first
100 millimeters a second?
100 millimeter second first layers, because the first layer was taking like an hour, and then the rest of the layers were taking like 3. And I'm like, well, if I could do the first layer in 20 minutes, then I get this down to under 4 hours, and I can do more cycles. So that was a big deal for me. So actually, I look at the bamboos now. I'm like, why are they so slow on the first layer? Because I still print. And then I switched to PET G because these things had to go outside in the sun. So I was doing all PET G, and PET G sticks really well. So you could do 133 millimeters per second first layer.
That would be the main issue, right?
Yeah. So, but all 0.28 millimeter layer heights. All my STLs I created were based around 0.28 millimeter layer heights. Because I needed 3 layers of 0.2 millimeters to get opaque colors consistently in all my filaments. And so that's just, I had this process down that I wanted.
And you had to find like really good PLA suppliers as well, because you needed to pretty much stick with the same colors you were already working on.
That actually wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, I wanted the filament to print well, but if my red from one year's tag was not the same as the red from the next year's tag, that no one cared. Like, that wasn't a big deal. The kids didn't care. The parents didn't care.
Just wanted the tag.
They just wanted the tag. They loved the tags. And actually, so it was funny because right as I started kind of transitioning away from worrying about I'm not going to go for the tags. That's not what I want to do. More and more teams started contacting me about making tags. So, we saw your tags you did. Can you? Like, okay, yeah. How many do you want? And at this point, it's so easy for me to crank out 50 or 100 tags. So I'm just so used to it that I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. And if I have my fixed pricing.
But you still had your main job at this point.
I still had my main job at this point. And these weren't that bad because, I got used to the point where, okay, as long as the print is basically the right length of time for me to go to the office, go to work, do my job, come home, and that's all filament, we're good.
I know the story as well.
So my question is, what clicked in your head, because you learned all of these filament swaps, how to do them more efficiently, everything. What was the kind of turning point for you to go, wait, I wonder if I could do this?
Yeah, so my father-in-law asked me, he got into cornhole, and he wanted a cornhole board with a particular picture on it. And he said, the guy he talked to wanted way too much money. And he said, could you 3D print something? I'm like, well, I can only go 12 inches by 12 inches. That's the biggest I can do. What do you want? And he wanted that fan art Gandalf versus the Balrog image. And I said, I mean, I could print something that's multicolored and looks like that, but I don't know how good it's going to be. Let me try it. And as I was organizing to print it, I said, wait a minute, this would be a lithophane, because there's no, I'm going to put the black in the front to make it look bright for the image. This would be a lithophane. I wonder if I could set the layers so that if you light it up, it looks really good. And I said, well, let me try it. And so, it was a big lithophane that I made. I think I used It's Litho. It's good online tool. It's easy to use, but it was a big file. And it took forever to slice. And then it took for laying it down it was amazing how much longer it took when laying it down and standing it up. It took so much longer to slice. And then just changing the layers about one layer or back and forth took forever too. But I was doing it, and the first try turned out really good.
Now, how long did it take? Because how many color swaps it was?
It was 5 colors, 4 colors. It was white, yellow, red. Actually, no, it was 5: white, yellow, orange, red, black. So 4 swaps. So I think it printed in about 7 hours. At that point, I'd moved everything to 0.6 millimeter nozzles. I'd learned to make a bag tag so that 0.6 worked, because then I could print even faster. So I had 2 core XYs at the time. They both printed 0.6. So I think it probably took about 7 hours to print. And, it was just swapped when I got there. I think I was in my office that day and I just swapped as it happened. So by the time my work day was finished, it was done. And I held it up to the light and was like, oh my gosh, this works. This looks amazing. And then I tried it without, I'm like, do I even need the orange? Can I just blend the yellow to the red? And I just didn't get the layers right. But I'm like, okay, this could work, but this didn't work right. And then I was like, well, can I do other colors? And I started trying to mess with other colors, and I could never. I'm like, where do I swap to get the color that I want? How do I get this color? How do I get that color? This one I can't see through. This one I see too much through. And I couldn't figure out how to work that out. And I thought, and also it's still a nightmare on the slicer to do these swaps, and I have no idea what it's going to look like. And that's where I had the inspiration to say, wait, I'm a software engineer. At the very least, I should be able to make it easier to set the layer swaps up. And hopefully I can make it so that I can see what it's going to look like before I commit hours to printing it.
Uh-huh.
And then very quickly I realized, well, I need to know some fundamental things about the filament to do this. And that's where transmission distance came in, TD. So I call it shorter. I called it transmissivity, but people have trouble saying that. So we went to transmission distance, and people immediately shorten. I said, I'm going to call it transmission distance, and I hope people shorten it to TD. And literally within a day, people were calling it TDs. Perfect. I didn't have to say we're calling this TD now. Which was just, I printed just cards that were up to 4 millimeters thick and with steps at 1/10 of a millimeter. And I said, how far through does light go on this card? Where does it stop changing color? Basically, as I look at it. And that was my measurement. So it's literally just how far through solid filament light goes. It took an hour and 15 minutes to print each one of these cards, because I had to go at 10 millimeter steps.
Yeah.
And And so I started using that number for doing these backlit lithophanes. And so it was all lithophanes to start with. And it was just layer swap lithophanes.
How good were they in the beginning?
Um,
As good as today?
Well, so the backlit lithophanes are different in many ways. They're more limited. You can only pick like one color family because you can't overcome a color. Because as I said, if you overcome a color, you can go to black. You can always go to black, but you can't go, once you're black, you can't change the color. It's black, with a light.
Yeah.
So you pretty much have to stick to color. Some of them are great. And some of the early ones are very good. I was very excited about them. And people online were asking, hey, how are you doing that? Because everyone's seen the CMYK ones, and they're very cool, but you really need a multi-material unit.
Yeah.
And I was doing these all by hand with hand swaps, most of them maximum 5 colors. And they look really cool. But they're definitely cruder than what I have today. And then I ran into Ian Smalley on the Bamboo Lab Facebook group. A lot of Facebook groups involved here. And I thought he was doing the same thing. And I said, I got a tool that can help you if you're doing this already in a slicer on, in your head. And he said, no, these aren't lit. These don't have any light from behind. Oh. And so I started working on this in October, I think this was of 2022. And then in February of 2023, it was late January, early February of 2023 that I ran into Ian's work. And I had spent a fair amount of time, I remember in December specifically, sitting in a swim meet, because my kids swim all the time, and talking with a woman who's a graphic designer and talking about color. Like, hey, what do I need to do about this? And I was still, at one point, I think I had just realized that I needed to switch to CMYK. Because I thought, light, I'm pushing light through it, so it's RGB. But it's not, it's still it's still pigment. And so it's still CMYK. And so I was like, I don't know, I didn't think about the CMYK color space. But it was all iterative. I would make an update to my model, and then I would print something, and then I'd say, okay, they don't look the same. How can I make what I have, my model, reflect what I printed?
And all this was still manually, or you're doing through software already?
So this was, this was at this point, I was predicting it in software. And just, I had a very crude version of HueForge, that in 2020.
How much time have you spent so far at this point developing?
This was like, became a passion project. So it was probably, it was probably fairly significant. I was probably spending 3 nights a week, from 9 to midnight working on
coding, researching. Yeah. What was your goal at the beginning? Because you found a problem and then you just went for it all the way down. And then you developed the software.
I actually originally was kind of thinking about selling the prints. Like, I wanted to make some prints that
it would be really unique as well.
Right. That would be unique, that people would be, how'd you do that?
Yeah.
But
I won't.
Right.
What multicolored?
I had spent some time on an Etsy store as well, selling croc charms. Crocs.
Oh, yeah.
Croc turns out to be a huge market. And so I was doing the croc plows, but I felt bad because the guy had made that model, but they fell out of the crocs and stuff. So I made my own version of the model that wouldn't fall out. And then I made a bulldozer bucket, like a John Deere bulldozer bucket. And I made a train cow catcher, like, and a top hat and some other things like that. And I was selling croc charms, and then the Silicon Valley Bank failed, and then all of a sudden my Etsy sales went through the floor. So, because I was selling, I don't know, and it was funny because when I had to go and every day print like 4 or 5 things and then ship them out, that was no big deal. But when it was like I didn't get an order for a week, and then I got an order, I'm like, I don't want to go downstairs and print this. Like, it's one order. It's just, when I was putting 6 boxes out every day, for the mailman to pick up, it's like, oh, okay, cool.
You feel proud of it.
Yeah. So I was thinking I could sell these, right? But they take a while to print. So I had to, and I paid my printers minimum wage. So, they got costly. And I sold a few, but art's so subjective. So, and I was doing mostly like AI generated art and like a few, like I stayed away from licensed stuff. And I think that's why a lot of people like the AI generated art, because you can stay away from the licensed stuff.
Yeah.
Not worry about I'm stealing someone else's. I mean, there's the arguments around AI generated art, and I totally get them. But like, from my perspective, it was like, I don't want to step on someone. I don't want to just go out there
mainly
photo off the
IP from.
Yeah, to try to avoid that. But like what I like, you may not like at all. And like, how do you get in contact? Your market is so small, right? Like, how do you get in contact with the people that are going to like what you like, unless you're doing fandom stuff? And then you're, you know,
and then
right.
we have a little bit of that struggle with STLFlix as well, because there's so people will always enjoy IP stuff, but how do you keep away from IP stuff and still create cool stuff?
So I would say it was 50%. This is just a cool problem, and it's a graphics task that I'd like to do, and I can do it. And it wasn't really changing. I would have to say it didn't really take more time than I was already spending printing. I was just printing less and spending more time in software, but it was all related. It was basically your whole time. Yeah, it was still my hobby. And it was still basically the same amount of time I was sinking into it.
Yeah, in the beginning, you made your printers faster, and then it was just about problem solving software to make things more efficient or easier to do.
This was because it was impossible. I mean, predicting what they'd look like ahead of time was pretty much impossible without the software, because you couldn't do it in the slicer. The slicers don't know anything about how the filaments blend, you know. But I spent a lot of time. It was all iterative. There was no like, let me go look up in a textbook on color theory and how to like. It was all iterative. Like, just like this print doesn't look like what I predicted. Let me fix my prediction. And the model got real complicated, and then it simplified. And the simple model did really well. And so I said, okay, I think that's a really good sign that I've converged on kind of the solution. Not that there aren't still some lingering issues, but I converged on the basic solution to the problem. So I was in that point where I was really confident. I just basically knew that what I predicted is what I was going to print, and with very minor variations. And I saw Ian's work, and I said, I think I could do that. Like, I understand how to blend the colors now. It's just going to be much shorter distances and be a little different. So, and he had been sitting there doing it in his head. So when I would give him a build and said, here, try this, flip the model inverted. Like, it's just a lithophane model, but flipped. Well, the lithophane's actually the negative, but I call this the negative, right? So flip it over and then blend the colors differently. And the very first time, these numbers are wrong. It won't come out like that. Like, okay, so what are they supposed to be? So you got to cut it at least in half, or he kept coming back. But because he could do it in his head, he could say, this is wrong, fix this, this is wrong. But so within a week, we had the model working.
Easy.
Yeah, but if I hadn't sucked that time to getting the model right and understanding how they blended first, I couldn't have even approached the problem at first.
Yeah,
that was before the bamboos. It was still all manual changing.
Well, no, the bamboos had come out. They came out in the late. They came out like early winter, late fall of 2022.
Yeah.
And so Ian had one. He was doing his 4 colors. I didn't have one. I was all doing it by hand. Well, that makes sense. I mean, like, I get it, right? I have 2 now, but I didn't at the time.
At the time, though, like, that wasn't even anything I'd thought about, right? And then you see more and more people like showing it off, and then it just like it was so rapid. Like,
oh yeah,
like the first like color lithophanes and stuff that came out, and then it was like, wait, when did we get 4K? Like, kind of like there's like no like in between of like mush or like mess ups.
Yeah,
like it was just like we went from this to this.
Yeah. Well, and to me, it was the number of people willing to spend for them.
Yeah,
because up until that, it'd be like, okay, I'm going to buy the $160 printer and upgrade it with these few parts, and then it'll be as good as a, and then the people, I'll drop $1,000 on a printer.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah.
What are you printing?
And the cool thing is that you were already working on multicolored prints before multicolored print actually became a thing, right?
That was popular, yeah.
Yeah. And even before they were available for everybody. So that was like a little bit of a timing thing.
No, the timing. Oh yeah, the timing was crazy good. Like, because I was working on it. I knew the bamboos were coming, but I wasn't working on it related to the bamboo.
Like the Kickstarter.
Yeah, because of the Kickstarter. And I had a friend who actually had backed it, and so he was getting one. But I didn't, like, financially. I was like, I can pay for the hobby, but I can't pay for a even an $800 printer on the Kickstarter price. Just to have a cool new toy.
And it's also a Gen 1 too, right?
Yeah.
You're banking on that money to be like, is it gonna actually
right
form?
Right. So
from a brand that had it ship it
nothing.
Yeah.
Right. I thought it was going to work, but I was like, you just don't know. Like, how many problems is it going to have? I'd seen enough printer Kickstarters and even non-Kickstarter printers come out and be like, really?
and the thing is it did have a lot of problems at the beginning, right? And it's nice that it's starting to evolve into something like they've done like 4 or 5 renditions of the AMS unit.
Yeah.
People aren't even aware.
Right. They don't talk about it.
I feel like the inner housing's been completely switched out multiple times.
Yeah.
Steve, you said your initial plan was to sell Hillforge prints.
Right.
When it became a software.
Right. Okay. So I actually got involved in the Stage Top Kickstarter, which was it's a gaming table. So it's a printable gaming table. And it was kind of one of those things where I was looking for it as a commercial product to sell. So I think it was $48 on Kickstarter for just the models and $96 if you wanted to sell the models. And I thought that's a pretty low bar to cross to make it worthwhile to get the license. $48 more is really not that much when you're selling prints, right? Though then it turned out that like the table takes a long time to print.
Yeah.
And actually I got into speed framing. There's these core frame components. I got into speed framing with this other guy on the forums, and we both got ours down to like an hour, and he managed to get his to like 45 minutes, and I couldn't do it. But most people were printing like, the Bamboos were printing them in 2.5, and then other people were printing them in like 11. Like an Ender 3 was printing it like 11 hours per frame, and you want like 30 of them.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know how I make money selling tables right now. But they also had a program where if you're a commercial backer, you could modify their tiles and sell tile files, or make new tiles and sell the digital files for the tiles. And so I started doing that. And then I realized selling digital files is where it's at, because there's no fulfillment. Like shipping. There's no, I don't have to go print it, box it, ship it. It just goes, And I never made tons of money on that. I made more than enough to justify my purchase, but I think I made $300 or $400 on files total. But that's where I was like, I don't want to sell prints anymore. Like what I wanted. I mean, I could sell a print if it was like literally like an art print. Like you're paying me as the artist, not as the product.
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, you're going to pay me because I'm really good at this, not because it's a piece of plastic work.
Because people actually see the value in the art and not the plastic.
Right. But then I'm like, I don't want to sell Hillforge prints. Like it wasn't Hillforge at the time, but I want to sell the software. But at the time, it was color lithophane software mostly.
More a software engineer.
It had the front lit component in it, but I actually had gone back to the color lithophanes because that's what I like doing. And but it was mostly color lithophanes at the time, and I was like, I could sell it for a little bit, but there's other ways to make color lithophanes, and they have pros and cons, but this has pros and cons too. So, but then someone was working on dungeon tiles for the Stage Top, and I said, I could paint those in Hillforge. I could use Hillforge to do predictions and to figure out how to make these. And he was into painting. I said, but a lot of people don't have painting skills or painting equipment. And so I got him to send me a couple of his files, and I quickly recoded Hillforge to take an STL again, because originally it took STLs, and then when I started making my own, I stopped taking STLs. And I said, okay, I'll take STLs again. And I painted a few of them and sent it back to him, and he was like, this is pretty amazing. And then I made the chessboard, and I was like, this is awesome. Okay, this is where it's at, because this is new. This is different. Mm-hmm. No one's done this. So let me focus on this part. So that's where kind of the Hillforge. So that was probably like April that I really was like, oh, okay,
2022.
Yeah, no, 23. Oh, wait, because with October I started, and then October's I have the first Git commits and the first Git screenshots of a very crude version of Hillforge. The color lithophane builder is what it was called at the time. And then it was about April that I was like, okay, this is going out as a product. I got some interest, and like, this is going to be a product. This is what I'm going to sell.
That's so cool.
So,
and when you finish the product, what do you think?
When
will
I finish the product?
I mean, this first version. But what was your expectation out of it?
Well, so we actually predicted the first weekend pretty well, Ian and I. So we got the Polymaker deal. So Polymaker
before launching it?
Before launch. So I went on the ZNZ podcast, or not podcast, live stream, the show they do every week. Because, Pezlas is totally into layer swaps. And so I had actually entered this competition about layer swaps, and with my my Cameo. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I feel like I'm cheating because I use software to do this and make it look not at all like layer swaps. Yeah. And I ended up, and so then I went on their podcast. They're like, what their show? Like, what is this? And I demoed it a little bit and showed it. It's amazing. And Nick was watching, and he's like, hey, can we talk in the morning? And okay. So he called me at like 7 in the morning and said, okay, here's what we want to do. I'm going to send you a bamboo, and we want to make HueForge free for users. I'm like, how are you going to do that? He said, we'll give them a Polymaker coupon equal to the purchase price. And I said, for all tiers? Because this is my tier list. He said, yeah, for all tiers. It's like, you're going to pay $175 a Polymaker coupon if someone pays $175 for lifetime. He said, yes.
Unlimited?
It was one per person. Okay. But it was open-ended, and then we were manually doing these coupons. Like every day at the end of the day, I'd pull the... At the end of the day, I pulled all the orders from the U.S. and Canada, and I put them in a spreadsheet, and I passed them to him, and then he jammed out the coupons.
How was the first sales day?
So the first sales day, so Friday, I released at like 3 p.m. And it was like, on Friday when I released, like, it was one of those things where I'm like, I could see 30 things that needed to be fixed, but I'm like, I just have to. It was a death march the last couple of weeks trying to get it out. Like every day, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get it out this week. Nope, I'm not going to get it out this week. Okay, I'm going to get it out next week. Nope, I'm not going to get it, and that Friday, I'm like, fine, it's good enough. It's going out the door. And so I shipped it on Friday. And yeah, it was a good Friday. Was really good. Saturday was.
But how was the launch? I mean, you published them on Facebook groups.
So I had been, on Twitter mostly, Twitter and some Facebook, and it was just pretty much Twitter and Facebook.
But you didn't have like a lot of followers, right?
I did have 3D Printing Nerd liking and replying to some of my comments. So because I had hit him with a feather. I had a video of a feather that I was looking at. I think this is one thing that people get wrong when they're trying to get attention from like a bigger person, a bigger figure, is they just try to like spam everything they do. And that's just super annoying. Like even if they have a good thing. So I was looking for strategic moments that made sense. And I found a thread where I thought it made sense. And I posted a video into it as a response to him because he was active and engaged in the thread, talking to people. And I was like, and it was a topical thing. Basically, he was talking about how people don't know all things 3D printing can do. And I said, yeah, even with all new techniques coming out, even people who are really experienced in 3D printing don't know everything they can do. And I put a video of one of my feathers, like just a feather, and then you turn it and you see a 3D printed. And he freaked out. And that really gave me a lot more visibility.
Amazing.
Then I had posted a few things on Reddit, 3D printing, and had gotten quite a bit of 300,000 or 400,000 views on some of those. And so I knew I had a certain number of people that would probably buy it opening weekend, and I knew that many of them were going to take the Polymaker deal all the way, like $175.
Yeah, making it continued on the Polymaker stuff because, like, for instance, for me, I did dabble in color lithophane at one point, and having a bamboo. One of the difficult things is, like, say you have a friend that's like, I really want this print, but I wanted my favorite team colors, right? So then you're trying to figure out what filament looks like this color. So a lot of people bought the NICS like reader to be able to see the color value and reference it on XYZ,
right,
wherever.
Right.
But then with you talking about like being able to see like the opacity and some filaments, was there something that you guys did with Polymaker where you could stick the filament in and it tells you a value?
Well, we didn't do that with Polymaker. Okay. So Polymaker did. At the launch time, I had created a device called a oscilloscope that was just like those. You printed discs and you stack them up. And so Polymaker sent one of their brand ambassador helpers, James, goes by Disturbed Medic. He went and got a calibrated light meter and did measurements for all of Polymaker. So when we launched, we had Polymaker filament. Everything else was just personal filament that Ian and I had. And then he had the whole Polymaker, Polylight, and PETG and ABS libraries done. Yeah. So it was all in there at launch. And then they worked with Additive Atom and he made filament packs. But the TD1 is recent. So that's just come out.
Sure.
Yeah. So the TD1 was, we kept coming up with new ways to test TD because people just didn't read it right. Like you give up a method that like Ian and I could use any of the methods and get good numbers. But yeah, I give the same method to someone else and they read it wrong.
Yeah, because for me, like when I looked at Q4, I was like, it just seemed like a bunch of numbers in front of you, right? So like having these like tools and other places to actually resources now giving more entry level into being able to utilize it.
Yeah. So we both kept working on different ways to do it. And I would come up with an idea, and then he had more time than I did because I was trying to run a software empire. And so he would like, oh, I'll make a CAD model around that. And then we had just finished the last one, which was the light box with the little step test that he put into it. And he said, well, I wonder if, and I had been thinking the same thing. Like, I bet you there's a way we could read just a strand of filament. And he said, I wonder if we could do something where we read a strand of filament. Because that would be like, you don't have to print anything and you just stick filament in it and it tells you, right? And I was like, yeah, this would be great. Mm-hmm. And he grabbed a bunch of hardware. And he said, this is what I'm grabbing. And I grabbed some hardware and we started testing some stuff. And pretty quickly, I was like, this is too involved for me to spend a lot of time on. I'll help you with some firmware. I'll help you with some coding stuff. Because he's got a little bit of coding in his background, but not a lot. So I'm like, I can help you with this, but like, I'd be happy for you to take this and run with it. And it's your thing because I don't have time to spend on it. And this is so useful, like so useful to so many people. So he took it and he learned circuit board design and Fusion 360. And he learned like all kinds of stuff, Python, circuit Python and just accessing boards and that kind of stuff. And he had the first demo units at ERF. He had 5. He'd ordered 5 circuit, the 5 circuit board deal for a PCB way, right? And he'd hand filled all those circuit boards, and he had those there. And the hardware is the same. Like the hardware actually hasn't changed since that date. What changed was the firmware. The firmware has changed a ton. We got way better because those numbers were all over the place, and we got way better at figuring out what the correct TUD value was from the values. So he launched that officially like 3 weeks ago, and then he'll have more at Rocky Mountain today. But yeah, really, it's very new that they're publicly available. That you weren't build it yourself. So he had a Patreon where you could get the BOM, and you could build it yourself, and you'd get firmware from him that's licensed. The BOM's open source. You can build your own, but the firmware is you pay. It's a $10 payment for the firmware right now if you want to build your own.
Well, it's the thing that like we always come back to like, where do you think 3D printing going? And I think obviously a big thing that people, for outsiders, look at is it's wasteful and stuff like that. And something like that style technology can be utilized to actually get proper values of unknown filament. Right?
Yep.
So
yeah,
like very, very.
And at the point of your first launch, you were still like in between jobs, right? You're still like you with your regular job and then U4 just as a side
job. Yep, that's correct. I was there.
And how long were you able to sustain those things?
I don't know if you can share with us numbers, like how was the first month? How many people came in?
If
you feel comfortable sharing? If you
that's always a difficult, right? The numbers make people jealous and make people angry and all, think you're white. But anyway, I'll tell you that the opening weekend I did $15,000 in sales.
That means,
which was pretty much exactly what Ian and I had predicted. But then I thought after the opening weekend, that was all the people that we had pent up for U4 to live in gold.
Yeah, those were the people that were waiting for you.
Waiting for me to release. Exactly.
Still amazing sales for.
Yeah. Right. So, and I mean, I was super and my wife, it was funny because it was a holiday weekend too.
You paid for all your holiday.
It was a holiday weekend too. So, the money was coming in, but it wasn't coming into my bank account. Mm-hmm. And so she's like, well, is this real? Like, is this really, it wasn't until like Tuesday when the money finally hit the bank account. She's like, it's real. There's money.
Okay, now I like to be printing.
Well, she actually, there was a point probably in April or May where we had a conversation and I said, no, this is like legitimately a startup kind of situation. Mm-hmm. This is a product that has potentially big value.
Yeah.
I was still looking to like pay for my kids swimming because swimming's really expensive. I was like, if I could make $20,000 or $30,000 a year on it, I'd be pretty happy. And, I would be able to scale my commitment and all that kind of stuff to it. Right. And so, that was really what my goal was. Like, let's make $2,000 or $3,000 a month on software sales that don't really require that much work. And then, I pay for some of this stuff that, it's always a stressor on the budget. Right. And then the first weekend was $15,000. I was like, okay, what am I think? Right. This is a little different.
This is obviously product market fit when you hit $50,000 in sales in the first week.
But again, I thought basically we hit our pent up demand, right? And so now, and one of the reasons I aggressively priced it was one, because I'm a hobbyist, I've always been a hobbyist. And so it was like, I hate it when you see a piece of software that, I can use this. It'll be awesome. Oh, it's $7,000, it's $700.
Yeah.
I can't really justify it for this project, I think. So I thought, and also I knew printing is viral. Very, very viral. And so I was like, if I can get a bunch of people buying the $12 license, that's what I launched at, was $12 for personal use. Then I can get a bunch of people putting prints out there, and then I can get more people. So I thought, okay, we're going to get this first, group of people in, and then then they'll start making stuff, and then it'll start getting
Everyone.
but it'll take some time. It'll take time. And then I had seeded some pre-copies out to a few, people I knew or vaguely knew or had communicated with. And without me knowing, I didn't know. But literally on the Monday after I released, Lost in Tech put out his video on UForge. And all of a sudden, everyone knew about UForge. And so then and then they knew about the Polymaker deal. And it was like, oh, okay, this is not the way that thing's going to go. It's not going to be now I get some
no-brainer.
Yeah, now I'm not going to get 1 or 2 sales a day, and then until it finally picks up, it's we're going to sell. And then Polymaker brought a bunch of them to the table at Murph, and people saw it. It was just like snowballing. It was like perfect time. It was such a timing.
Were you impressed? Surprised?
Oh, I couldn't. It was very weird. I kept thinking I was going to wake up and somehow be in a worse situation than I was in the day before because it can't. This thing doesn't happen to me. It
was like a dream.
It was kind of like a dream, yeah. I was like, this kind of stuff doesn't happen to people like me. We just go to our job and work and go home and take care of our families, and that's what happens, And I mean, it certainly wasn't immediately go quit my job money. It was good money, and I was like, wow. I was very careful. I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's the worst part. There's money coming in, you got big decision. You had a family because when I went to this. The first time that was just myself. So it was easier for me to take the leap, but if you imagine it must have been really hard.
Yeah, well, it was. I wanted to go earlier, but my wife said, can we please just make sure that we get consistent income that'll pay for us? And that's really fair. That's super fair. And we don't know, in the fall, all of a sudden, everyone hates it and, no more UForge.
Yeah.
And then, hey, it was a great run. And, so the very first thing I did was pay off any debt we had that wasn't the house. I was like, all right, all debt's gone. So I won't be in a worse situation. If it all stops tomorrow, I won't be in a worse situation.
The exact same as you were.
Yeah. And then it was, get up, form a business. Because everyone had told me, you don't need to form a business until you make, $12K a year. Well, okay.
A week.
So the next week I formed a business, and then I hired an accountant because I'm like, I'm going to screw that up. So let's hire an accountant. And then it was just learning a bunch about business stuff, things I think I'd have to worry.
It's a new world.
Yeah. And then you learn where your tools break. My Shopify digital download was awful. And I had to make a new one. And, all that kind
all
of
the
stuff.
growing pages.
Yeah, all the growing pages. Yeah, exactly.
And one of the things I find coolest, at least from STLFlix, is when you put something out, you obviously have expectation, but the community always comes and surprises you. Does that happen with you often?
Yeah, pretty often. The community's been really, really supportive. I mean, there's always your detractors who don't like, for whatever reason, right? And that's always going to be the case. You're never going to make everyone happy, and you kind of have to be okay with that. Every once in a while, when someone says something really angry about it, and you're like, I don't know you've never contacted me. I don't know why you're so upset, but okay, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, we're just going to move on. But I will say when I first launched, I took stuff pretty personally, but I knew I was taking it personally.
Uh-huh.
So most of the time I'd be like, I'm taking that really personally. So I'm just going to step back and not say anything. In fact, there was one time where someone posted a video and I said, I can't watch it. Can someone else watch it? And please tell me if he's full of crap or if what he's saying makes sense and I need to address it. And they basically came back and said, yeah, okay, you don't really need to worry about that. It's like, okay. And then I didn't, but
it's very hard at this beginning.
It's a little easier now, but it was real hard at the beginning. Yeah.
Me and Bruno, we had previous business as well. We had previous business before, and we had kind of people copying us in this previous business.
Yeah.
And we have been to a lot of therapy sessions to be able, because I had this kind of hate and people copying us and this conflict. It's the bad part about being entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And being on the internet as well, like everyone has like a little bit of reach in the internet has haters. I don't know why, but that's happened.
Yeah, but I have to say, like in general, everyone's been really supportive. I've had a lot of people support me, through retweeting and linking and sharing and stuff. But they have no they're not getting anything from it except that they're like, hey, I'm excited about this product, or I'm excited about what you do. I've had several people say, hey, I bought it at launch just to support you.
And, one of the the thing that I love about it is the fact that it is a tool that allows somebody to physically do something creative or beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that you as a software person or somebody that has been using it for a while might not think of. And then it's this brand new thing that it just sparks everything, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love when someone does something with it I've never thought to do. Yeah. I had people asking me, I can only go down to 25 millimeters. It's too small. I'm like, why would you want to make a HuForge full? And then I see what they're doing with it. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, that's super cool.
You never thought about it.
Yeah.
And like some creative applications in the sense of like, I've seen people like make little 3D printed arcade things for like their Nintendo Switch, but then they're making these crazy side panels of gradients. And it's like, that's, in my opinion, like the pictures and stuff are awesome, but being able to use them as functional aspects of another design is really interesting.
My favorite thing is still the faux materials, doing faux material work with it so you can make it look like it's not 3D printed, what it's 3D printed.
When did you decide to quit your job and be employed full time?
December. In December, I was like, I can't.
Well, like 6 months later.
Yeah, so I've been wanting to, but things have faded as they had to. Like June and July were pretty crazy, and then I'm like, it has to fade, right? It can't. And so it was like, where's the bottom, right? So I think we found the bottom in August, or something that appears to be the bottom in August. And rebounded a little bit, not huge, but rebounded in September and October, and then it was just like by December I had a lot of family stuff happen, completely unrelated, like deaths in the family and things like that happened, and medical issues that just took a bunch of time away, and so everything was just more stressful. And going to my job, I got much better at automating a lot of responses and stuff. So I was spending less time on HuForge, but it was still time, and I can't. I'm burned out. I can't do both. And at the time, I wanted to do HuForge more, and it was paying more. So I was like, I'm going to make that happen. So I'm not going to drop HuForge. That would be stupid. So I talked to my wife. I'm like, look, here's what's saved. Here's what's in the business bank account. Here's what's coming in. Here's how it works. And she said, okay, if you think we can, if that'll work, can we do it? And the company, my company was really good. I had kept them up to date. They knew what was going on. They knew I was doing this. They knew it was successful. And so when I came to them and said, yeah, I'd like to step away. They were great. They were upset. They were like, okay, well, that's crap. We were hoping that wouldn't happen. But I was also said, there's not a fixed date. It's not like January 1st, I'm out the door. Like, I'd like to be done by the end of June or January. By the end of January, I'd like to be out. And they came back and said, how about January 12th? I said, that's perfect. So, we just, I worked the rest of the year. I finished all my tasking, and they've all said, hey, we hope it succeeds, but if it ever goes wrong, come back, please come back. So now they said, we can't guarantee we'll have a spot, but we want to have a spot. If you come back, if you're available again, we want to have a spot for you. So
were you afraid?
You're always afraid, right? It's always, whenever you've got a family, especially, you're always worried about like, where's the money coming from? Where's the what you need coming from, right? So, I was at the time, I was really kind of excited. Mm-hmm. But I will say the first week after, the first week after though, I kept feeling like I was doing something wrong all day. Mm-hmm. Like I worked on HuForge all day, and I was supposed to do that. And then I'd feel like, oh, it's nighttime. It's time to go work on HuForge, because that's when I always worked on HuForge. But now, it's nighttime. It's time to actually do stuff with my family.
Yeah, not for movies, with the family.
And it's hard. And it didn't help at the start that I hadn't put out a release since September 14th, and was starting to get questions about that. This is January 12th, and so I really wanted to get the next release out, because I hadn't done a ton of work. It just hadn't come out yet. So I did really kind of push for the first couple of weeks to get things done and get stuff out the door. And like, hey, no, there's a real thing. I've been working. But it's still hard. It's still hard to not just be like, I'm excited about what I'm working on. So I just want to go back to work on it.
Are you still a one-man show?
I'm still a one-man show.
Impressive.
Yeah.
So a man show, I mean, that's what I was using. I'm like, well, I could pay myself, but can I pay another person? I've paid a few contractors. Like I have someone redesigning my website for me because I don't have time to do that. I'm no good at that. I have partnered with some other companies, so I have a lot of filament coming out actually at the show, Criminal, and it's all about filling gaps that HueForge needs. So darker colored filaments with higher TDs. And so someone else talked to me. He said, hey, I know these guys that make filament. You'd be interested in working together on it. And I said, okay. And so we shared the risk on the filament. And so I said, okay, we'll share the risk on the filament. We'll share the reward of the filament. I'm happy to do that. So I've done some partnerships with companies, like just one or two companies that make sense. But I helped Ajax, but it's not like it's just me doing I do all the customer support. I do all the coding. I do all the release notes and all that stuff.
So it has been 3 months since you are full time, right?
Yeah.
How does it feel right now?
Is it still feeling wrong?
You are an entrepreneur.
It doesn't feel wrong anymore. I feel like I haven't done a very good job splitting family time and work, and I've been working on like that's something I'm trying very hard to get better at because I do like spending time with my family. And the habit that I've had a really hard time breaking is I've always had to put in 40 hours a week, and I've had to log those 40 hours I put in. And so I feel like my kids will have a swim meet. I'll be like, okay, I'll go be the parent at the swim meet because I don't have to work. But then I feel like I have to make up those hours.
Yeah. There's always this guilt.
Yeah. And I don't. But I feel like, but I really feel like now that I'm full time that I have like this extra obligation to the community that has supported me. Like that they're supporting me. So therefore I have to do everything I can to try to make good on their support.
And the community is pretty big.
Yeah.
So it's not just like a few people. Yeah. And come on, I mean, is it? Oh, no.
And the poor long-suffering Linux people. I still haven't put out Linux versions.
Steve, what do you see in the future of HueForge? If you can share.
Yeah. No, so the future of HueForge, I think, people ask me what's the 1.0 release, because we're not at 1.0, we're 7.1, we're 0.7.1. The 1.0 release, I think, but at the very least, it writes out a 3MF file for you with the layer swaps already into it. It'll cut it up into parts if you want to cut up into parts. And it's much, much easier to get accurate colors if you want. But it was funny that most people come in, I wanted to make this photocopy of my picture, and I can't, it's too hard. Well, how about you try not making a photocopy of your picture? How about you try making an interpretation of your picture?
Yeah.
And if either they just, all right, well, okay, that was $18 down the drain, whatever, or they just do it. And then a lot of people actually really like that I got to make choices about what this image is going to look like, and it isn't a copy. And they get into that. They're like, I get to be creative on and so it's really exciting to see that. But at the same time, there are things that are virtually impossible to make in UForge. And so I've been working towards making that easier to do more multicolor, more colors, because that's more swaps. I actually had to pull a third AMS into one of my bamboos the other day to do an 11 color HueForge.
Oh, wow.
That is at the show. You'll see it at the show tomorrow.
Reach right under the pile of tears.
Actually, it should be right at the 3D printing nerds booth. So I do want to go down that direction. And I would also like to eventually, this is kind of low, but I think by that, the long-term plan, you'll be able to print them flat or textured. Obviously, if you print them flat, it's going to be an AMS only or multi-material only operation. There'll be more waste. But I see the very legitimate business / use cases for a flat HueForge print. And I know technically how to do it. It's just got to be a fair amount of coding. So that's, I think I see HueForge at a certain point being mature enough that I'd either pass it to someone else to do most of the work on it and work on other products, or I'm just working on other products and there isn't that much to do on HueForge. I don't want to ever make it stale, but I think there's a point where it's going to have most of the features you want. It's like, it's almost like you're trying to just I just need to get more in there so that more people buy it, and pay for the maintenance, and there's not really something new. Maybe I'll come up with something. Maybe there'll be 5-axis printing that I can do external HueForges, onto a model, though the print time on that, I gotta think it's gonna be.
But there will always be something to be done.
There will always be something to do, but I really do have. I already have some ideas from some other products that are similar but not the same that I'd like to work on as well. So, I hope it's a family of products.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Really nice story. Really, really nice to know everything you have been through. I was talking to Bruno the other day that we really believe you create a new style of STL.
Yeah.
Just not created one new model. You create a new category.
You've definitely created a new category of models. Like you don't do like a color multi-thing, you do a hue forge. Mm-hmm. That's the way I see it, at least. Yeah. And I really like your story because it's similar to our story as well, where you started with the physical product and then you moved on to the digital product. So there's a lot of similarities in our story over there.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Congratulations for everything you have done.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to look more Hue Forge prints on your booth tomorrow.
Yeah.
For the ones I saw it, and I've never seen, because it's like what we were discussing today at the event. Like, we're so immersed on our own prints that we don't really print stuff from outside.
Yeah.
And when I looked at a Hue Forge, I was like, oh my God, this is so incredible. I want to do a Hue Forge as well.
A little pizza slice too.
Yeah, I almost ate a pizza.
That's the Chris Perillo pizza slice. Yeah. And you have to see him in person too.
Yeah, it is. It's very much like, I've never seen, like I've tried, like I said a few times, but there is that like the initial gap. I know, like really need to dial, figure it out yourself, right? And that's obviously what you're working to improve, which is going to be awesome. So seeing those just makes me really excited to try to mess around with them. And obviously with Remurf this weekend, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that do the same.
I hope so. Yeah.
All right. So thank you very much for participating. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We will be doing some more with some of the coolest creators that are here at Remurf. So stick with us. Bye.
Bye.
And don't forget to like this and subscribe to see the next episodes.
Try Hue Forge.